Hello everyone, Sam here. Before we get going today, we've got a great little history podcast to shout about for when you're looking for something else to listen to after you've finished this episode, obviously. It's called Half-Wit History, and it's a topical comedy history podcast. Every week, the hosts Jonathan and Kylie talk about the upcoming week, but in the past, so next week, 500 years ago sort of thing. It's a cracking little podcast, so here's a wee trailer before we get stuck into the next episode of That Was Genius.
Hi, and welcome to Half-Wit History. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylie.
And this is a podcast where we talk about the upcoming week, but a long time ago.
And sometimes not so long ago.
So if you enjoy history and comedy, then do we have the show for you?
We cover all sorts of topics from pop culture to ancient history, with some fiction thrown in just for fun.
Like episode 14, The Nefarious Nodule, where we play a choose-your-own-adventure game.
Or episode 33, Water, Earth, Fire, Molasses, where I cover the Great Molasses Flood of 1919 in Boston.
Or if you're into conspiracy theories, check out episode 11, Eldritch Witches, where I hunt down a teleporting ship.
Or if you're feeling nostalgic, check out episode 15, You Meddling Nords, where I take a spin in the Mystery Machine with Scooby-Doo and the gang.
Are you into science? Because I dive into the immortal genes of Henrietta Lacks in episode 18, Hella Big Dynamite.
And for anyone who loves musicals as much as I, check out episode 22, Defying Ancestry, where I spend one short day talking about my favorite musical, Wicked.
Half-Wit History is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or your favorite podcatcher.
You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Half-Wit History, or visit our website at halfwit-history.com.
And as always, I've been your Half-Wit.
And I'm your historian.
And we hope you'll give us a listen.
Bye!
Hello and welcome to That Was Genius, the little history podcast in which Tom, who's got that Friday feeling, even though it's Thursday, but it is the bank holiday, and Sam, who still has...
Not for you, though, listeners.
Not for you, no. It's been and gone. I hope you're suitably fat.
Stuffed full of Easter eggs.
And absolutely pickled. Not that any of you will have waited until Easter for this during lockdown. You'll have been at that since March. So yes, it's the Little History Podcast in which Tom and Sam, that is me, discuss history stories on a theme each week. We decide the theme the week in advance, but everything else that happens is a surprise. And Tom set this week's theme because he had something lined up already. The lazy bastard.
I did.
And what is it, Tom?
It's Travellers Week.
Travellers Week. Not to be confused with Journeys Week.
Yeah, it's similar, wasn't it? Yeah, a little bit similar. But then that's a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a very long time ago.
We said at the end of that episode we should do this again.
Yes, and here we are.
I think you should count your lucky stars I didn't do another Australian shipwreck. Actually,
did you not?
Because, no, I have not got an Australian
I'm slightly
shipwreck
disappointed.
Sorry. No, you won't be. You won't be. It's scatological. You'll love it.
Oh, perfect. Do like a bit of scatology. I'm doing Germans, so it goes together like a
snap,
like a horse and carriage.
Yes. There we go. The Germans are notoriously scatological, aren't they?
They are indeed. They love it. The dirty bastards. Oh, that was a large creak. That sounded like a ship in a storm there.
Was it?
Yeah.
I'll do it again.
I don't know what was that.
That was me just turning my microphone around slightly.
Oh, lovely. Well, as long as you do that now rather than when you're talking like you normally do, that's perfect.
It was a bit uncomfortable the way I had it launched up my arse. I just needed to adjust it slightly.
Oh, it's so much more echoey now, though. It's going to be a nightmare in post-production. I'm going to have to put the rectifier. Yeah.
The rectifier
back on it. Effect apply.
I'll push it back down into the colon.
Now that, audiophiles, is what you call a low-pass filter. Right, I'm bored of the flipping things tradition. I think you've waited all week for this. I think you should go first.
Oh, right. Oh, God, you're jumping me straight.
I forgot. This is ridiculously quick, isn't it? We're only 3 minutes into the podcast. How have you found your research, Tom? Easy. You found it a week in advance. There we go. Crack on.
Have you found your research, Sam? You didn't find it as easy, did you? I feel like I need a bit of foreplay.
You need to be warmed up before we get going. Okay.
Yeah, I need to be titillated.
I have to admit, I struggled a little bit, but then I went down a click hole from my initial idea, which was patchy, of doing
Who's Patchy? That sounds like I don't know, some sort of house artist.
One of the Muppets. Yeah. It's one of the dwarves. The one who, if he goes too far away from the house, starts to buffer. It's the Snow White's dwarf with only 2 bars. So I started doing diplomatic faux pas, so people who went on diplomatic missions and cocked up. And I'm still going to do a couple of those as honourable mentions because there's some quite funny ones. And then from there, I went down a click hole.
Prince Philip springs to mind.
Actually, I haven't done Prince Philip. I really should have done, but if only. I mean, Prince Philip himself is rather historic, isn't he? He's an archaeological dig all on his own. No, I haven't, but I have got some British royalty.
Excellent. Okay.
But then I went from there down a click hole to the topic that I am going to talk about, which is not as silly this week, but it's really interesting. There's a bit of silliness, but it's mostly just really interesting.
That's good. It's a bit of a reversal from the last couple of weeks because I'm doing the silly sauce and you're doing something a bit more sensible.
I am.
Just a thought.
Go on.
We've had a few listener comments, haven't we?
We have had a couple of listener comments.
Do you want to do them now?
Oh, go on then, why not?
Why not? Let's live a little. What did we had Turtley, that was on Podbean, I think, and she said that we're fantastic, thank you very much. It also looked a little bit like he/she fell on their keyboard when writing the word need. There are a lot of E's in it. So we do hope you're okay, Turtley.
Yes, wink twice for no.
But we had a Facebook shout-out as well, didn't we? Someone kindly...
Oh, yeah, we got shouted out in a list of under-the-radar comedy podcasts on the...
Did you know who that chap was?
No.
Oh, I thought it might have been one of your mates. So I think it was a Gareth Jones, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it's
just
Gareth Jones.
Gareth. Sorry, you've been nice to us. I shouldn't.
Do a shit Welsh accent, just in case.
Actually, I was doing an Indian.
honest, Gov. Honest. It was an Indian accent, Gov. And then we had an Apple review, didn't we? We had Tiffany94. Thank you, Tiffany94.
Very kind, very kind. And actually, literally, as we were talking, as we've been talking, this is live, this is coming in now, to the newsroom. This is interactive, isn't it, people? Matthew Stone has emailed us. That was geniuscast@gmail.com. Who
said, "You're shit."
Yes.
He has emailed in a death threat.
Yes.
Thank you.
He has said, "I am a Nigerian prince contacting you from the bank." No, he says, "Hey Tom and Sam, great work. I'm reading this live. I haven't finished it, so if it does get rude halfway through, don't blame me."
Excellent.
"Hey Tom and Sam, great work on the podcast. I love hearing both of you try to mimic various accents. You're both hilarious and quite good at it. I'm not sure we've been listening to the same podcast, Matthew." "I wonder if you consider doing accents and dialects as a topic someday. I'd love to hear this."
That's not bad.
Yeah, interesting. Left field. I like that. "I'd love to hear the history and your own cracks at things like Cajun accent and the Gullah accent. Some pretty niche history and geography among these smaller groups who have funny sounds that come out of their mouths. Keep up the good work. Cheers, Matt."
The good thing about that, though, is if you're going to do a niche accent, nobody knows what it sounds like anyway.
No, I don't know what Gullah. What is Gullah? I don't know what Gullah is.
I do like Cajun on my chips, though. Oh, sprinkle that on your freshly cut up chips.
Oh.
Stick them in the oven. Lovely.
I like a bit of catfish. Catfish is Cajun, isn't it, I think?
Catfish?
Yeah, I love a bit of catfish. It's delicious.
Oh, is it? What is a catfish? Is it cat? Is it fish? I don't know. Is it a fish that looks like a cat or a cat that looks like a fish?
It's a furry fish that brings you mice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds good. How do you have it?
Well, you have to catch it first off by dangling a glittery tassel.
It's a bit like a piranha.
And then if it wants to, it'll turn up.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and then as soon as you've caught it, it immediately demands to be let back into the river again, at which point you let it enter the river, and then it demands to come back into the fishing basket.
Because it's a cantankerous catfish.
It is a cantankerous catfish.
Excellent. I think we had pets on the subject of catfish. We had pets.
Oh yes, someone did suggest pets. Yes,
that might have been Tiffany again.
Can't find that one now, but yes, pets is a good idea as well. That's an interesting one.
So we've got pets and accents in the back pocket.
Yeah,
lovely. Yes, I'm beginning, aren't I? Sam, you'll be surprised to hear I actually met an old friend this week when I was out walking around the village.
Did you?
I did.
Was it Ringo Starr again?
No, it was someone else, but they are very famous.
Are they?
And you'll never guess who it was.
Was
Sam.
it David Bowie?
It wasn't David Bowie. It's a
David
good
Bowie.
guess. David Bowie might come in the future episode. Let me give you a clue, Sam.
Okay.
Hey up, Pamela, put on some... do that again. Read this again. Sorry, I fucked it up. Hey up, Pamela, put some sun cream on my arse, will you?
No, I'm not there yet.
It was David Hasselhoff. You're right, Sam. David
Oh.
Hasselhoff. Yeah.
David Hasselhoff. Amazing.
Yeah, we met back in Berlin, 91. That's when we first met. He's been a good friend all since then.
Amazing. And
Anyway.
did you watch David Hasselhoff knock down the Berlin Wall together?
Me and David Hasselhoff, the northern twat with a wife called Pamela. Yeah.
You just sat there with a couple of tins going, hey up, I thought that American lad looks like a right tit.
He's taken that. I tell you what, he's taken that wall down all the wrong way.
No.
You know who would be good for that? Fred Dibner. He'd know how to take that down.
I hope he's going to replace that with a nice slat wooden fence covered in Ronseal.
Anyway, David Hasselhoff, not to be mixed up with David Hasselhoff.
Of course not.
As it turns out, is a big fan of the show. And as
As
it
he would
turns
be.
out... Oh, he wrote a song, would you believe it,
Oh,
Sam?
fuck, did he?
And it was inspired by our episode on Wagner, the scatological composer. I think it was your piece, wasn't it? Wagner?
It was Mozart, but I don't want to ruin your song.
Was it Mozart? He's still German. That's fine.
Austrian.
Wagner was scatological as well, though.
Was he?
Yeah, they're all bloody scatological.
Are you sure you're not thinking of his contemporary Wankner?
Well, it could have been... could have been Wagner. He was an artist, though, wasn't he? A very expressive artist.
Yes.
Hold on, let me press play again on my cassette.
Okay.
Click. Some people won't grab the bug brush, afraid to stand up to the shite. Some people need to unblock the crapper when the water in the toilet gets high. Don't you worry, it's gonna be alright. 'Cause I'm always ready, I won't let the flood the room with shite. Oh, you know the chorus. I'll be ready.
I'll be ready.
Never you fear.
Never you fear.
I'll be ready.
Ooh.
Forever and always. I'm always here. There you go.
David Hasselhoff's 24-hour plumbing service, £80 call-out fee, £20 an hour thereafter.
So that's David. So yeah, and he recommended to me an awesomely scatological source from medieval Germany, Sam. Because
Did he?
as we've already discussed, medieval Germany in general, love a poo joke.
They absolutely do, yes. They love to take it up the Danube.
They do. I say. Anyway, that source is a source called Till Eulenspiegel, which translates as owl mirror, or possibly arsewipe, according to experts in Middle German. So,
Hang on, let's analyse this. How did owl mirror and arsewipe become synonymous?
well,
What
the
for-
owl looks very much like an arse, Sam, as we all know.
Of course we do. A big hairy
the
German
mirror-
arse.
Yep, the mirror is all you can get nowadays to wipe your arse with.
I see.
So it's a very forward thinking.
Yeah, I want to know. It's a bit like in Demolition. Is it Demolition Man? Yeah, it's Demolition Man, where they've got
sliced alone.
with the 3 shells. I want to know how you clean your arse with an owl and a mirror.
That's a great scene, isn't it? Because Sly Stallone just starts swearing because it keeps giving him tickets so he can wipe his ass. That is brilliant. That's a cracking scene. Anyway, where was I? As we've discovered in this podcast on innumerable occasions, history is full of spoil sports, like, the UN. the WHO, UNICEF,
God.
Amnesty International, wankers. Unfortunately for us, Sam, the original document detailing the adventures of mischief maker and prankster extraordinaire Till Eulenspiegel had been boulderized since the early 16th century. Horribly boulderized by Spoil Sports.
Do we need to remind people what boulderizing is?
It's the act of making something rude into something less rude because you're a boring twat.
The opposite of this podcast. We are putting our effort into deboulderizing history. You can thank us later.
So yes, I'm fluent in many medieval languages, Sam. As
I know you are,
because we often talk in medieval languages, don't we? Just casually.
We do, yeah. We drop in our withers and whatnots.
Yes, and our hither-tithers. But I've not quite mastered early New High German yet.
No, it was a problem I was having last week, actually, with my source on nuns, on mad nuns.
Yeah, you were, weren't you? Yeah, you did say that at the time. So the original documents were tantalisingly out of reach. So all of these rude documents. And modern boulderized versions of the stories are easily available in English. There's a translation from 1972. Actually, no, the translation from 1972 is a good one. It's rude, but I couldn't find it online. And I was also willing to pay for this one, but I just couldn't find it anywhere. So that really disappointed me. However, through exhaustive research, I have discovered some translations of some of the original stories, and there are about 100 short stories in this original document. So, hurrah, I have found some translations.
Excellent.
So let me tell you more about Till Eulenspiegel. The story of Till originates in the 16th century, or at least this is when our oldest sources come from, but as we have learned in older episodes, these stories are often older than the first printed version. Till is born in 1300, and he travels around the Holy Roman Empire, being a toe rag and general pranker-wanker until his death at the hands of the Black Death in 1350. And that sentence alone just sort of indicates how well connected my last 3 to 4 contributions to our episodes have been.
Yes, it's almost as if you've been reading one source.
I've read one article in a history magazine. That'll do.
I can spread this into 1 month.
Yeah, that'll do. I'll just make up some shit about them having rude stories. And the stories from Till are fairly well known in their boulderized forms. So, for example, famous British children's author Michael Rosen has written a version of the stories.
Oh, interesting.
Back in the late 80s, I think he published that for the first time. Richard Strauss wrote a tone poem at the end of the 19th century about Till, and I'm not quite sure how a tone poem differs to a standard piece of orchestral music. It's not an area of expertise for me, but he basically wrote a piece of music about Till. It's been made into numerous films and television series, particularly in places like Germany and Denmark, I think, from my research. And there are museums devoted to him in Germany. He has the odd statue here or there, and he has a fountain named after him somewhere in Germany. And I even found some old fine porcelain from a Copenhagen artist depicting Till. So he's very, very well known in sort of Germanic cultures. There's even a French word, espiegel, or espieglerie, thought to be derived from Till Eulenspiegel, and the French word means impish or mischievous. There, very, very interesting. And here's the final little interesting thing for you. There was a club founded in 1971 in New York called TES, T-E-S, the Eulenspiegel Society. Have a guess what it was, Sam? The first of its kind in the United States.
Was it a swingers club?
A swimming club. Yes, a little known fact, prior to 1971, no one in the US could swim.
I actually said swinging.
Oh, it's a swinging club, sorry.
They weren't very good at that either. They were definitely more into the slides and the monkey bars.
It was actually, you're not far off, it was USA's first BDSM club, apparently. There you go.
There we go.
Hark back to last episode, that was probably where Mr. Whippy...
and Little Miss Dildo ended up.
Or was it Little Mr. Buttplug? All used to spend their free time.
Excellent.
Anyway, without further ado, Sam, I'm not being particularly historical today, I'll be honest with you. I'm just going to tell you some rude stories.
Fine.
I've done a bit of history in the last couple of episodes. Let's enjoy some original stories that I found translated into English, and the following two are from a chap called D.L. Ashleyman, a retired professor from the University of Pittsburgh, and these translations are available on the university website. Ooh, get me, look, I'm citing.
Whoa.
Get the fuck out of here.
Steady now.
Out of this pub, you pretentious wanker. The first story is called How Till Eulenspiegel Became a Furrier's Apprentice. It's a little bit long, Sam, but don't worry, quite rapidly you're going to be captivated and on the edge of your seat.
Excellent. I'm currently leaning back in my seat, so I've got about a foot to go forwards.
Oh, okay. Do keep us updated on your progress.
We'll do. If you hear a thud,
of your
rein it in
against the desk. It was midwinter when Till Eulenspiegel arrived in Arschleben. Times were hard, but
in Arschleben, this has started well.
Arschleben. Yeah, I got to that town name, having not reread my notes, but after I wrote them, thinking, but I just decided to plough on. Times were hard, but finally he found a furrier who was willing to take on an apprentice, and he was put to work sewing pelts. Not being accustomed to the smell of curing hides, he said, "Pew, pew, you're as white as chalk, but stink like dung." The furrier said, "If you don't like the smell, then why are you a furrier's apprentice? It's a natural smell. It's only wool." Eulenspiegel said nothing, but thought, "One bad thing can drive another bad thing away." Then he let such a sour fart that the furrier and his wife had to stop working.
Oh, this book suddenly went very German.
The furrier said, "If you have to fart like that, then go out into the courtyard. There you can fart as much as you like." Eulenspiegel answered, "A fart is more natural and healthier than the stench of your sheep pelts." The furrier said, "Healthy or not, if you want to fart, then go outside." Eulenspiegel said, "Master, it would do no good because farts don't like the cold. They are used to being in a warm place. That's why if you let a fart, it always rushes for your nose. It goes from one warm place to another." The furrier said nothing, for he could see that Eulenspiegel knew nothing of the furrier trade and was a rogue at that, and he sent him on his way. There you go. Cracking.
It's a great story. It's a very German story. It's a great story.
It's a great story. And this book, the 1971 translation that it was the 1972 translation that I came across, is on my hit list. It's on my list of historical books to purchase, along with Boccaccio's Decameron and a few others that I think would be really good fun.
Oh, your library is going to be excellent if you can find them in hardback.
The first editions.
Yeah.
Here's the second story.
What I like as well
source.
is that it's very much of its era, because it sounds very much like it was written by a 5-year-old who'd been told in their first year of school to write a creative story. And they've come up with, obviously this is a 5-year-old boy, the fart that wouldn't die.
Which half of the room did. The other half of the schoolroom did the irritating story where something marvellous happens and it ends with, "And then suddenly he was falling and falling. And then he woke up.
Just a dream."
Yeah. "Oh, so creative. Well done, 5-year-old. Fuck off out the pub."
This is why Tom lost his teaching licence.
Next story, Till Eulenspiegel and the innkeeper at Cologne. Eulenspiegel journeyed to Cologne, where he stayed at an inn for 2 or 3 days without letting anyone know who he was. During this time he noticed that the innkeeper was a rogue, and he thought, "The guests will not be well off where the innkeeper is a rogue. You should find another place to stay." That evening he told the innkeeper that he would be looking for another place to stay. The latter showed the other guests to their beds, but not Eulenspiegel, who then said, "Sir, I paid just as much for my lodgings as the others did, but you showed them to their beds. Am I supposed to sleep here on this bench?" The innkeeper said, "Look, here is a pair of sheets," and he let a fart. Then he let another one and said, "Look, this is your pillow." Then for the third time he let one until it stank and said, "Look, now you have an entire bed. Use them until morning and then lay them in a pile for me so I can find everything together."
Ooh.
Eulenspiegel said nothing, but thought, "Look, take note that one rogue deserves another rogue," and that night he slept on the bench. Now the innkeeper had a nice folding table. Eulenspiegel opened up the leaves, shit a large pile on the table, and then closed it up again. He got up early in the morning, went to the innkeeper's room and said, "Sir, I thank you for the night's lodging." Then letting a large fart, he said, "Those are the feathers from your bed. I laid the pillow, the sheets and the covers all together in a pile." The innkeeper said, "Sir, that is good. I will look after them as soon as I get up." Eulenspiegel said, "Do that." Just look around, you'll find them all right. And with that he left the inn. The innkeeper expected many guests for the noon meal, and he said that they should eat at the nice folding table. When he opened up the table, an evil stink flew up his nose. Seeing the dung, he said, "He gives what it was earned. He paid for a fart with a shit." Then the innkeeper sent for Eulenspiegel because he wanted to get to know him better. Eulenspiegel did indeed come back, and he and the innkeeper appreciated one another's tricks so much that from this time forth Eulenspiegel got a good bed. That's very German as well, isn't it?
Crime pays, Tom. Crime pays.
Oh, you did. Oh, that's a good retort. I like a good shitty riposte. Come back later. We'll have a chat. So that just gives a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful insight into the stories in this book, and I was so disappointed I couldn't read more of them. There is another good one.
It does sound amazing.
It sounds brilliant, doesn't it?
It does. I want to read this.
You can see why it's so popular. There's another good one where Till... And it's not rude, this one. It's just I thought it was quite funny. There's another good one where Till is practising tightrope walking outside his house as a child. His mother cuts the end of the rope and Till falls in a river, much to the amusement of the locals who are watching. The next day, Till returns to the same spot, reattaches the rope and performs some excellent tightrope tricks. As a grand finale, he tells the large number of onlookers to help him by tying their left shoes to a long rope that he has. They do so. Till takes a rope, climbs up on the tightrope out of reach of the audience, and takes each shoe at a time and throws them randomly into the crowd. Cracking. Good times.
So basically just a bit of a twat with a slightly loose bowel.
Who liked fart jokes. And it's unclear whether or not Till Eulenspiegel was a genuine person, but he was basically a clown, an acrobat, a travelling idiot and a prankster. And he went around the whole Holy Roman Empire in the 50 years he was living, just being a prat. And on a more serious note, the word owl mirror could actually refer to the fact that Till Eulenspiegel, through these stories, through these acts, was actually putting up a mirror to society. So he was...
yes. When we shit on the innkeeper's table, really, we shit on our own tables. We shit on the tables of society.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
a parable, really.
Absolutely, and the jokes, the poo jokes, are not there. The fact are not there for their initial base amusement. They're there as a way of producing something much more profound.
Absolutely. Well, the third one sounded quite profound.
Absolutely.
The third part was definitely more profound.
This is presumably how academics in the past have justified translating this into different languages by pretending there's something more serious about it, when deep down they just wanted to translate some funny, rude stories.
Yeah. And make them not rude anymore.
Well, but yeah, apart from those people, they're
because
boring
arseholes.
bastards. Yeah, wankers. Here are some other chapter/story titles that I did get a hold of from some book websites, but I obviously couldn't read the actual stories. But they just give you a good feel for some of the other Till stories. Here's one. How Eulenspiegel became a brewer's assistant at Einbeck, and how he boiled a dog called Hops instead of Hops. Hey! Here's another one. How the priest of Hohengelsen ate one of Eulenspiegel's sausages, something which subsequently did not make him happy. Just let the mind wander. We can just all decide what the sausages were and why they made the priests unhappy. You can just decide that yourself. But from my research, it would appear that most of these stories did involve Eulenspiegel tricking someone into touching, eating, smelling poo.
Deutschland, Deutschland.
Dear. And the third one, how Eulenspiegel, and this is very, very medieval, very, very medieval. How Eulenspiegel cheated Jews at Frankfurt on the Main out of 1,000 guilders by selling them his excrement as profits berries. Very, very medieval there. Very medieval, very German. Anti-Semitic.
Again, very German.
And scatological.
Perfect.
And on that note, Sam...
Which, incidentally, will be the perfect segue into mine.
Is that right? Excellent. Well, there you go. Let's use this as an opportunity to segue. Anti-Semitic, shit-loving Germans. Over to you, Sam.
Well, yes. Your favourite anti-Semitic, shit-loving German. Guten Tag!
Hello! Yeah.
Wow, I like that. That's a beautiful story, Tom. I'm glad you found it. I need to read more medieval literature because it is foul.
This is brilliant. This is a primary source. I mean, fuck bloody Venerable Bede. You know, off you go, Froissart. Let's have some fun stuff. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Go fuck yourself, Beowulf.
Yeah.
Come back when you've discovered the joys of a long drop.
Up your bum, Song of Roland. Let's get some proper stuff.
Damn straight. Well, that's wonderful, Tom. And thank you. Thank you for bringing the silly this week.
It's why we make a good team, isn't it, Sam? You know, we're looking out for each other. I knew deep
Got each
down,
other's backs.
Yeah, I knew you were going to do something slightly more serious, so I just thought I'd bring the silly.
Good man. Good man. Well, I am going to start slightly silly today, Tom. Slightly silly. I hinted at the beginning of the podcast that I was going to start off with a couple of honourable mentions.
I thought you were going to do something really, really pathetically silly, like have what are those things at parties go?
A whoopee cushion?
Well, yeah, the sound of a fart to go. Or just have a spinning bow tie or something.
Yeah, I've got some itching powder to
sprinkle over your own seat.
No, I haven't. I've just got crabs. No, Tom. I'm going to start off with a couple of honourable mentions for funny diplomatic faux pas over the years. These are ones that I found, and I was going to, for my story today, just do faux pas, and I thought, no, it's not quite narrative enough. I want to do something which is a little bit more in depth. But there were a couple which I just couldn't pass up. And the first is a special shout out to US President Jimmy Carter.
Thanks for listening, Jimmy.
Yeah, he's texting, asking if we can play Shawaddy Waddy. And so, yeah, in 1977, Jimmy Carter went to Poland. Now, this should have been a fairly boring trip, Tom. You turn up, give a big speech banging on about democracy for a while in front of a load of communists who aren't really listening, do a few vodka shots, take a photo smiling with a baby and shaking the hand of a dictator, and piss off home after checking your luggage for microphones. However, there was a problem with this trip from the outset, and that was Mr. Carter's translator, who was a guy called Stephen Seymour. Now, he was paid $150 a day, which is about $650 per day today, so you'd hope that he could speak Polish, Tom.
Could he speak Polish, Sam?
Not very well. He could read and write it, not so good with the speaking. What Carter meant to say in his great big opening speech to the Polish people, and what he did say in English, was that he had left America that morning. Fairly boring start, but it got translated into Polish as President Carter had left America for good that morning, i.e. that he was migrating to Poland. Hello! Confusing, but Poland's a nice enough country. Fine, fair enough. Significantly more embarrassing was what happened next, Tom. President Carter said he wanted to learn more on his trip about Poland's desires for the future. And how was that translated, Tom? The Polish audience, and fuck only knows why, were told that President Carter wanted to get to know them carnally. Before announcing that he was very excited to grab at Poland's private parts. They never teach that one in school, do they? So that sent me down the rabbit hole of other diplomatic blunders, and I came across, and I'm going to pronounce his first name wrong, I think it's Joachim von Ribbentrop. Now, some listeners, and probably yourself, Tom, will be familiar with von Ribbentrop.
Wasn't von Ribbentrop a Nazi?
He was, yes. He was the chief Nazi diplomat and foreign minister who brought together the Axis powers.
He wasn't very good at it. Just kept invading countries.
I mean, diplomacy of sorts. Well, he did bring together the Axis powers, and he also arranged the quite famous Molotov-Ribbentrop non-aggression pact between the USSR and Germany, which eventually led to the splitting of Poland by the pair in 1939, which is how I found him from Jimmy Carter in Poland. But he was also the German ambassador to the UK for a few years and made a right dick up of it. He surrounded himself with fanatical nutcases and committed so many diplomatic blunders that by the end of his term, no serious British officials would even see him. He took this personally, becoming increasingly Anglophobic, to the point where he actually tried to convince Hitler, and this genuinely happened, to sign up to an anti-British alliance with the Soviets and to invade the British Empire instead of Eastern Europe. That didn't happen, obviously, but what an alternative world history...
It would have been a mistake, wouldn't it, Sam? Because they would have had their asses handed.
They would have done, Tom. They would have done.
Who do you think
you are kidding Hitler and Stalin? So he committed a whole load of stupid gaffes, which got him a right bad reputation in Britain.
Right bad reputation,
and made him a laughing stock.
In Newcastle, nobody liked one drop.
Well, Tom, actually, more like Durham. So I lost the accent there completely. I don't know where that went. A bit Peaky Blinders, wasn't it? So several of his faux pas were related to his fondness for a certain salute.
Right.
So in November 1936, he was taken to a service in Durham Cathedral, and a hymn called, and I don't know this hymn, Glorious Things of Thee Are Spoken was sung.
It's Glorious Things of the Arse Are Spoken.
Yes. Glorious things from thy arse doth emanate. In the key of C. Now,
hold on. There's got to be a hymn that we can bastardize.
All farts bright and sonorous, all guffs deep down and harsh. All farts bright and sonorous, they all come from your arse. Each smelly little bum puff, each rancid little guff. God has them all in his pocket and he hands them out with love.
Very good. Can I have a go? I'll have a go.
Okay.
My wind has broken like the first morning. My arse has spoken like the first bird. Praise for my arse thing. Praise for my shitting. Praise for them springing fresh from my arse.
I see what you've done there. You've replaced lots of words with arse. I see. Hey.
Yeah.
One way, got your number. Beautiful.
I quietly just enjoyed singing a hymn.
Me too. I feel deeply spiritual right now.
I feel like I'm just a step closer to heaven.
Have you ever seen the video of the American preacher that someone's like he's speaking in tongues
preacher,
and someone's just put loads of fart sounds over him? Yes. Like, Jesus, I can feel you coming. It's beautiful.
Wait a moment. Just keep waiting. Just wait for the Lord. I think he's quite a famous
televangelist.
Yes. Televangelist, and I think he's been done for corruption or fraud in the past, and he's still making money. So yeah, I think he's quite a famous televangelist. But it is funny. It's the farting preacher. That is second year of university. I distinctly remember discovering the farting preacher.
So to get vaguely back to the story, the hymn started, "Glorious things of thee are spoken." Now, as the organ kicked up, the first few bars of this song sounded very much like the Horst Wessel song, which was the Nazi anthem. Ribbentrop, with reflex action, jumped to his feet, threw the Nazi salute and started Sieg Heiling in the middle of Durham Cathedral in the middle of a service.
How weird.
He very quickly had to be literally manhandled and pulled back down into his seat by his handlers, who told him he was a fucking idiot.
Very Dr. Strangelove, that, isn't it?
It is very Dr. Strangelove, precisely that. Far funnier, though. Far funnier, Tom, was the occasion in February 1937 where he accidentally punched King George VI in the face. Which, as political gaffes go, is a pretty good one.
Pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
Pretty good.
Don't punch a head of state in the face.
No, well, it's actually, do you know what? It's a tradition that you're not even supposed to touch the monarch because of their healing powers. And there was a big furore a few years ago when Michelle Obama, I think, put her arm around Queen Elizabeth and the royal correspondents went mad.
Oh, well, yeah, she probably had gonorrhea or something that she needed fixing.
I could have done it. Yeah, could have done it. Who can
Maybe
say?
had an ingrown toenail and she just thought, oh, if I quickly touch the Queen, sorted.
Done.
You should rub your bum up against her, Sam.
You're a fucking idiot. So George was approaching Ribbentrop for a friendly handshake and a formal dinner. Now, as he approached, Ribbentrop, ever the good Nazi, pulled out his old favourite Nazi salute. And because George was closing in closer for a handshake, as he did the Nazi salute, he just punched him square on the nose, knocking him back with almost enough force to spark him out.
Wow.
Now that is a faux pas. Anyway, all this got me on to thinking about more traditional travelling and exploration, Tom.
There was a very good, sorry to interrupt, but there was a very good political faux pas from New Zealand.
Why are you apologising for interrupting now? It's taken me 25 minutes to get through my first page of notes. I had to forcibly restrain you from doing the Match of the Day theme tune. But you're sorry now. Okay, go on.
Well, I'm not really. There was quite a famous one from New Zealand that may not have got out of New Zealand, and I think this was after the New Zealand rugby team, the All Blacks, won the 2011 World Cup final, and it was a World Cup that took place in New Zealand, and so the All Blacks captain Richie McCaw was given the trophy in New Zealand by the then New Zealand Prime Minister John Key. And there was what can only be described as a handshake gangbang that was fully televised, where Richie McCaw went to shake the hand of someone else who was handing him the trophy, and John Key thought, no, I'm the Prime Minister. I've got to get my hand in right now for the photo shoot. And there was just a very awkward three-person handshake with fingers pointing in all sorts of directions, which was very amusing.
Excellent. And the trophy, I presume, was dropped in the middle of it.
Onto his head.
Yeah.
Yes, and he proceeded to run around the rugby pitch.
Slightly concussed with a colander on his head. Lovely. So yes, from all of these faux pas, I had a bit of a thought, because we've talked a lot about explorers on this podcast, and a lot of the time they're pretty morally dubious, but they're always our guys, so to speak. They're British, they're Australian, but we haven't really talked much about the quote-unquote bad guys and their exploration of the world. So today, since we're going travelling, I thought I'd talk a bit about a group called the, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, the Ahnenerbe. Ahnenerbe.
Sing it.
Ahnenerbe.
Sing it like you mean it.
Ahnenerbe.
Sing it like a gospel singer,
Digging
Sam.
for the very first time. They were Nazi archaeologists, and their friends, the Amt Rosenberg.
Cher and Madonna. Any female artist over the age of 150, you can do brilliantly.
Yeah, absolutely. My Dame Vera Lynn is famed.
Shirley Bassey.
Diamonds are forever. So yes, the Ahnenerbe and the Amt Rosenberg, who were bizarre and downright evil pseudoscientific Nazi archaeological societies who toured the world trying to find evidence to prove their frankly batshit crazy ideas about race and history. Now, Tom, you've probably seen Indiana Jones, haven't you?
Oh, I'm a big Indiana Jones fan, Sam.
Yes. So you'll know that he hates Nazis. And these are the guys he hates. These are the guys that the Nazis were based off in Indiana Jones.
Journalists, Sam. Indiana Jones hates Nazis and journalists who are asking slightly edgy questions. That's what Indiana Jones hates.
He does. He hates all of that. And snakes.
And snakes. He hates snakes.
Maybe that's the journalists. Who can say? Yeah. So these were the guys he hates, and there's a whole load of legends surrounding them, obviously, like Indiana Jones, as well as the general Nazi obsession with the occult, but these groups did exist, and they had some pretty mad expeditions under their belt. Now, some of this was to try and find out more about German heritage, some was to prove the superiority of German heritage, but most of it was actually to try and prove that wherever you were in the world, the Germans got there first. Right. And therefore had a hereditary and racial right to claim X or Y territory from whoever happened to be living there now.
So were they sort of like, getting a really strong German person to lift up a pyramid, and then they would quickly flick
some sauerkraut or a schnitzel underneath it. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was more a case of they'd take a look at the pyramids and they'd say, that pyramid looks quite a lot like eine Toblerone.
As the Swiss, they are similar to us. Yeah,
so we can surmise from this that the Swiss and Germans built the pyramids.
Oh, very good, yeah.
Yeah.
In Rome, they have the Colosseum. Looks very much like a gatto. And you know where gatto comes from? The Black Forest.
The Black Forest, yeah.
The Black Forest in Germany, so it is the Black Forest gatto. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. What they were specifically not looking for was Aryan archaeology. This is a bit confusing, but the academics of these groups viewed the kind of traditional Nazi trope of the Aryan-Semitic divide as being really overly simplistic and really just a crowd pleaser for the peasants.
Get out of here.
I know, right? Well, their actual views weren't any better. Their actual views were no better. They were just slightly more complicated.
Slightly more complicated racism.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Dressed up in lots of words. Because these people believed that the Aryans were merely the upper echelons of the Nordic people, so the kind of the Scandinavians, Northern Europeans, whilst the Jews were a cultural mishmash who'd spread themselves around any culture they came into contact with, and therefore didn't really count as anything and weren't worthy of any respect. So exactly the same idea, just couched slightly differently. It's still utter nonsense, a twist on the classic. And so what these guys were looking for was essentially Nordic history. And with it, the Nazis hoped, proof that Nordic paganism was the one true religion. And this really went quite high up in the Nazi power structure, that they really wanted paganism to be the official religion of Nazism. Christianity was kind of tolerated, but not really celebrated. They wanted paganism back.
I mean, after all, Christ was a Jew.
Well, that was the basis of it, yes.
Not good stuff.
They didn't want to be following a religion that had its roots in Judaism, essentially. The first of these groups is Amt Rosenberg, which was an organisation founded by Alfred Rosenberg in 1934 and was smaller than the Anonebe, but was the far more professional outfit. It had the express aim of supporting the theory that the German people were the last... this is... Right, we're getting into batshit crazy territory immediately. Bear in mind, this is the more serious group of archaeologists who were more respected and better trained. They set out to prove the claim that the German people were the last refugees from the lost city of Atlantis.
Right.
And therefore were the father folk of all modern civilizations,
right,
which the German people had travelled the world, sharing with the people they met all of the knowledge of civilization before finally settling in Germany. Why wouldn't you? It didn't launch much in the way of major expeditions. It was more of an academic organisation.
It's a common justification, though, isn't it? Throughout history, it's a common way of justifying your rule. Bastardise history to connect. The Scottish, was it during the Middle Ages? The Scottish royalty connected themselves to Aeneas, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yeah,
they traced
absolutely.
Their ancestry back down to ancient Roman Aeneas.
Yep, and so at some point, almost every monarch or despot in the Western world has connected themselves to Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
Almost all of them. Yeah, it's completely standard. And that's exactly what these guys are doing. It just so happens that the history they were trying to connect themselves with was fucking nonsense. It was a crack dream. So Anoneb was much more interesting as an organisation, but absolutely more batty. It was also an absolutely horrific organisation, being involved in quite a lot of human experimentation during its lifetime. In particular, they did a lot of experiments in World War II on prisoners using nonsense ancient herbal remedies to try and cure deliberate gunshot wounds. So they'd shoot a prisoner and then rub some ointment on it and see what happened. They died, usually.
Because they had guns in the ancient world.
Yeah. Well, and because herbal remedies work so well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely. Remember, let's go back to basics here. The ancients, you could conquer the whole of the ancient world by making your pike slightly longer.
Absolutely. That was considered a major escalation in technology, which took several decades to remedy.
Make your spear longer. For crying out loud.
Wait until they start throwing them, Tom.
Ooh-wee. Here we go.
I mean, everyone was fine with knives until an archer came along and decided that he wanted to shoot that guy all the way over there with a knife. So the organisation was founded by Himmler himself, Heinrich Himmler, and by Dutch prehistorian Herman Wirth in 1935. Now, these two were convinced that the ancient ruins that were being found around Germany predated all other known civilizations by thousands and thousands of years and showed evidence of an early, long-lost Nordic civilization. Conventional archaeologists, of course, who knew about, Egypt and Assyria, started
Babylon,
mocking them ruthlessly, at which point Wirth spun a tale that the German people, the reason why they were there first, but there was no evidence of it really, was
Very
that the
tidy.
German... Yeah, they were just very, very efficient at cleaning up after themselves.
Yeah.
Very into recycling. No, he claimed that the German people had started out in a far northern Arctic enclave, so up in the North Pole, long since lost to the sea, which was in fact the mythical city of Atlantis, so tying it back to their original batshit crazy theory. So there's no evidence of it because it's all under the ocean.
Yeah.
And because he had the support of the Nazi Party, that line, despite being nonsense, pretty much became official government policy, that the German people were descended from a long-lost city in the Arctic Circle.
A freezing cold Atlantis.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Atlantis on Ice, the Disney version.
Yeah.
In fact, Ahnenerbe was so beloved of the Nazi hierarchy and its works were so respected by them that it was eventually absorbed into the SS. And the way it went about proving this was by launching nonsense expeditions all over the world. So in 1935 into 1936, Himmler paid for an expedition into the wastelands of northern Finland to try and find the origins of this lost civilization. The group recorded ancient Finnish songs and folklore, they took casts of rock carvings, and they even interviewed and filmed witches and shamans to try and work out their magical powers and to learn a bit more about the past, who had apparently foreseen their arrival. So you can see where this kind of belief, this conspiracy theory that the Nazis were really into the occult came from. It's because they were searching out fucking witches.
And they were so can you not help but feel that they were so batshit crazy they started believing they're batshit?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. They were completely sold on this. Like the archaeologists themselves thoroughly believed what they were talking about.
So convinced were they that they were right, that they were willing to believe anything put in front of them.
Including witch doctors, yep,
Sounds
absolutely.
A bit like vegans, doesn't it?
Yeah, another expedition. In 1937, the group discovered a load of runic petroglyphs in Italy, so rock paintings, which convinced them that, yes, Germans had in fact founded, Tom, the city of Rome.
Of course they did.
And therefore, the Roman Empire was in fact Nordic.
Yes.
And lots of evidence to support this, obviously. I don't know if you've ever met an Italian, Tom. They are not particularly German.
Efficiency?
Very different people, very different cultures.
Emotionally reserved?
No. But of course, all of this was very convenient because suddenly, oh look, because the German Roman Empire had once controlled all the way up in territory all the way up into Iran and all across North Africa, that meant that under the German doctrine of first dibs, the Germans could now claim all of the Eastern Mediterranean and Middle East. Look!
Right,
magic!
Yeah.
Oddly, they went on a secret expedition to map, explore and possibly even colonise an area of the coast of Antarctica that was claimed by Norway, partly because they believed the Germans were well suited to very cold climates. But nothing ever really came of that because it turns out they weren't particularly well suited to Antarctic climates.
Oh.
So this is a particularly mad one. In 1938, the organisation launched an expedition to Tibet, led by German zoologist and SS officer and spy Ernst Schaefer, to try and prove yet another bonkers theory by a German racialist author called Hans Gunther, who's also known as the Race Pope, which is a dubious job title, isn't it? Yeah, it's a bit like the Tiger King, but anti-Semitic.
I was thinking a little bit more like Wacky Racers.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. The Pope-mobile's a real thing.
Exactly, and the Pope-mobile was shooting along.
Yeah.
The Race Pope. No, that's Match of the Day.
Or as the series should have been called, Tom, Wacky Racists.
Yeah, that joke has been done before in this podcast.
I know it has, yes, but it's a good one and relevant, so... So yes, this expedition to Tibet was to try and prove a particularly bonkers theory by the race pope Hans Gunther that the Germans had invaded...
That's the top.
What? No, it's not. That's Little Spanish Flea by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, Tom. As well you know.
Good knowledge.
Thanks. My record collection is fire. So this theory was that the Germans had invaded China and Tibet in 2000 BC.
Ooh, that's a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, and a long way to go from Germany to Tibet.
Yeah.
But there we go. There was a batshit crazy theory that because Nazi Germany was given credence that this had happened. And they also wanted to try and prove an even madder sub-theory that had stemmed from this, that Hitler, Tom, and this was Himmler's personal belief, that Hitler was a direct descendant of Buddha.
Right.
And that the two's teachings directly correlated.
You often see, don't you? You often see Buddhas depicted with little moustaches.
Well, absolutely, yes. And you see Buddha pointing to the horizon.
Yep.
With an outstretched palm.
And lifted leg.
Yeah, and you often see Buddha riding atop a Panzerkampfwagen 4 down the boulevards of Paris. It's one of those things. It's funny how art repeats itself over time, isn't it?
Although you mentioned that, the Nazi symbol is Buddhist in origin, is it not?
Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is.
And on that one piece of evidence was built this theory.
It's too much of a coincidence, Tom. This is like David Icke, 5G and coronavirus all over again. The pieces fit, sheeple. Wake up.
Oh, was that what David Icke was talking about?
Oh, yeah.
So the BBC article didn't go into detail as to what he was gibbering on about.
No, people are taking it stupidly seriously, though. Like, 2 or 3 phone masts have been set fire to in the UK as a result.
As someone wisely pointed out, there was no 3G, 5G, 1G, 2G during the bubonic plague.
That is true, yes. Or wasn't there?
Well,
maybe the Nordic super race were pinging out their 5G signals, yeah?
Well, that could explain how they managed to get so far and do so much. They could have all been talking over mobile phones.
Yes. So Himmler was convinced that Hitler and Buddha were related and their teachings correlated. Although I think Burma, Sri Lanka, fanatical Buddhists with a slightly genocidal bent. Stranger things have happened.
True. The Buddhists are certainly not immune to being bastards, are they?
No, they're not.
Do you know why that is, Sam?
Why is that, Tom?
It's because they're human.
It is.
We all have the potential to be turds.
We do all have the potential to be turds. So, officially, the expedition was there to map magnetic fields and for bird spotting. But in reality, they spent most of their time making plaster casts of local people's heads and measuring their body.
I can't breathe. Stay very still. We are plaster casting. Oh, who the fuck are you?
Hold your breath. God in Himmel, hold your breath.
Where did you come from? I'm just bloody walking along the street, and before I know it, I'm having my face plaster casted.
I will just hold still, yeah. I will cut a little hole in a minute. So yes, well, as well as making plaster casts of unsuspecting passers-by, they were also measuring their heads.
What just happened? I was out walking my dog, and I'm sure I felt a tape measure tickle my ear.
Yeah. I went to get a new suit measure today, and the tailor looked somewhat different from my normal Tibetan tailor.
Hello.
He had a very funny accent. Hello. Mein Name ist Heinz the Suit. I am a traditional Tibetan tailor.
Yeah.
And today we have a new lovely selection of fabrics by Hugo Boss. And yeah, you would look darling in +4s and thigh-high leather boots. Honig, let me just get out the tape measure. Oh, rather round down there, aren't we? So,
But all you've done is measured my head.
It is all we need.
999 is a good tailor knows.
Everything comes from the head circumference.
Yeah, we can work out the rest as we come along. You know, I just have an eye for these things. What does SS stand for? Oh, it stands for super suits, stylish suits, suave suits.
I'm the super suits.
Funnily enough, they weren't above pretending to be someone to get what they wanted, Tom. Because Ernst Schaefer, the spy SS officer and zoologist, made lots of scientific doodles, Tom. And I think you'll like this, Tom, because what do slightly stuck-up explorers with slightly fascistic bents like to make doodles of, Tom?
Kinky gorillas. Gorillas in lingerie.
Well, you were half right.
Kangaroos in high heels. Hedgehogs getting out of the shower.
Actually, you'll find it's llamas in compromising positions.
Llamas in pyjamas.
Yes, he made lots of scientific doodles of the sexual habits of the Tibetan people. Particularly, Tom, and for absolutely no reason that I can fathom, that this German would be doing this, he was particularly fond of doing detailed scientific drawings of the Tibetan people masturbating and their homosexual activity, where, for obvious scientific reasons, he made detailed drawings of every known homosexual sexual position practiced by the Tibetans.
Wow.
Oh, you would not believe what they are doing. It is so disgusting, I could not take my eyes off it. I had to keep watching. I took a picture just to prove that it was happening, because I could not believe it was my very own eyes.
Absolutely. I thought, do you know who? Mein Gott, I cannot wait to show this to Adolf when I get home.
Because I do know very much he likes being shot on, so I think he will probably enjoy this.
It will cement the reputation of the German people as being very, very much like the Tibetan people and the Buddhists. Yeah? Because you like to shit in the mouth, we like to shit in the mouth. Clearly, it is a sign that a Nordic civilization has passed through here many eons ago. Right. And... well, the amazing thing is, Tom, and this is where we come on to from the suits thing, he genuinely did, in order to get close to the Tibetans to film their sex acts, he posed as a doctor and as a travelling faith healer and insisted on watching them have sex in order to supposedly come up with cures for their various STIs.
Oh, dear.
Which is a bit of an abuse of trust, even from an SS officer.
I'm getting a sense of sexual repression here.
Yes, just a touch. Well, that's the problem. No touching allowed. But the strangest expedition, and I am very nearly done, was probably to Bolivia, Tom. And it was headed by a guy named Edmund Kiss, a German author who was highly respected by the Nazis. In 1928, he visited the temples of the Andes and discovered, somewhat unsurprisingly, given the Nazis' propensity to find what they were looking for, that... that these temples looked an awful lot like some traditional German houses. Therefore, ergo, Dummkopf, they simply must have been built by Nordic travellers. Wait for it, Tom, wait for it. 1 million years ago.
1 million years.
1 million years. That, for reference, is not long after the first human species began to appear at all, and it's 750,000 years before modern humans emerged.
I was about to say, it's way before anatomically modern humans.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's
We're talking Lucy, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking 749,000 years before Bruce Forsyth.
The first anatomically modern human.
Nice to see you, nice.
Oh, there's no one else around.
Oh, what a disappointment. Diddly-do. What am I going to do?
I'll just wait around here for the Cro-Magnons to arrive, and we'll have a foxtrot. So
Big or
Kiss
small,
claimed...
I like a Neanderthal.
I like them Neanderthals. I like them all. So Kiss claimed that the temples were built as part of an Atlantan colony or diplomatic mission millennia, hundreds of thousands, million years ago, and featured futuristic technology and even advanced celestial calendars. He even claimed to have found statues of German people at the Andean temples.
I thought you were going to say statues of Bruce Forsyth, because I could believe that.
Yeah, well, me too. No, he found Bruce there.
The great god Bruce.
Sitting by the Stargate, yeah.
In his pose. His generation game pose.
Let's have a look at what you can win. A cuddly toy. A human sacrifice. The kidneys of your enemies.
What do points make? Great spears.
Excellent. Very well done. Unfortunately, the statues of Bruce Forsyth and the Germans were unfortunately never seen again after he spirited them away for safekeeping. Unsurprisingly, after this, he wrote a series of science fiction novels based on the site. Because it's amazing how quickly this scientific fact was able to be turned to fiction. Unfortunately, we'll never know the truth of the Andean temples. Well, I think we will, but anyway, because a new expedition planned by KISS for 1939 was cancelled due to the outbreak of the war, which is a shame, Tom, because as far as an Arab was concerned, "You can only be German to discover the world in the form of old runes around the world. When finding out which ancient race the world's compatible with, he just needed extra time to tell." Kiss.
Oh, it was a Tom Jones. I thought you were going to do, what was it, Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons, that's it.
So there we go. That's my song for the week.
Kiss.
So anyway, there we go, Tom. The slightly odd expeditions of the mad, racist, and not especially academically talented German archaeological societies.
Well, I never. Did they not realise they were meddling with powers that you can't possibly comprehend, Sam?
I don't think they did, Tom. I don't think they did. Do you know what the really odd thing is? They got away with it after the war. A few of them were arrested for.
You've not heard about the Nuremberg trials?
Well, a few of them, the ones who were involved in particularly in the medical experiments, did get tried and executed at Nuremberg. But most of the rest just melted back into German academia and were running archaeology departments in Germany up until the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, well, I think there would have been a lot of that, wouldn't they? I mean, there's no way you can mobilise a whole nation to kill millions of Jews systematically and not have a few turds lurking around afterwards. Can you really? What would
Absolutely.
it have been like?
Do you know who we need, Tom?
Clark
We
Gable.
need David Hasselhoff.
David Hasselhoff.
He'll flush him out.
All right, where do you want me to go? Okay. I'm on it. I'll find him.
But imagine what it would have been like in 1950s, 60s, 70s Germany, where everyone's looking at each other like, just don't mention the war. I guess it's what made that episode of Fawlty Towers so funny. Because it must have been like that, mustn't it, in Germany? Just don't mention the war. We all knew we were complicit.
Yep, absolutely.
We all had relatives who were complicit. I mean, imagine people who were on the right side of the war. You've all got stories of your granddad who was doing this. And one of my granddads was arrived at some of the big concentration camps the day after they were liberated and was looking after prisoners.
Because one of my granddad left the day before.
Is that right?
Genuinely. No, we don't know. My great-great-grandfather was a prison officer during the war. He was a civilian prison officer before the war and then was a prison officer during the war where he had to go and stay somewhere else and never really talked about it afterwards. Yeah, well, there's the joy of having German family.
But that's the thing, isn't it? Like if you're on the winning side, your relatives, you have all these stories that you're proud to talk about what your grandparents did during the war. If you're German, you're just going to be thinking, yeah, my granddad. Not much you can be proud of there, is there?
No, I mean, well, there were a lot of people who were just soldiers and weren't involved in war crimes.
Well, yeah.
But plenty who were.
Yeah, there's plenty that knew what was going on.
At least they've apologised, Japan.
Well, and, in the end, actually, you can't blame people for the actions of their grandfathers, can you? Their fathers.
No.
I've met lots of German people who've been lovely. Australians as well.
Really?
That took me much by surprise. Yeah, when I went to visit Australia, when I was backpacking, I imagined they were all going to be knobs, and actually I met some very, very lovely, generous, kind-hearted Australians. What a surprise that was.
Well, perfect.
They're not all racist,
there we go.
Sam.
Everyone can be, well, much like the Germans, Tom. Well, I think that's it for this episode, isn't it?
That'll doodly do.
So what do you feel like next week, Tom? Because I think we've got a couple of good suggestions in doing accents and doing pets. What do you reckon?
Pets with accents.
Unless you've got a better idea. Pets with accents. Okay. Sorted.
Do you want to actually give that a go?
No.
I think that's a bit of a challenge. We'll do pets next week. How's that?
Yeah, unless you've got a better idea. Unless you found a saucy sauce that you want to dip in
No, I'm not planning on dipping myself in any sauce.
Really?
No. Well, it is Easter.
Shame.
Family tradition is dipping ourselves in Tabasco. No, let's do pets.
Pets it is. Well, thank you very, very much for tuning in to another episode of That Was Genius. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, let us know. Leave a review on your podcast app of choice and get in touch with us on Twitter, _was_genius, Instagram @thatwasgenius, and Facebook, That Was Genius Podcast. Right, say goodbye, Tom.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.